bio I sent in was, I co-authored this 5 love languages book, and I'm a parent of 2 kids that are associated with Valley Lutheran. So here I am. And I have personal stories of how the 5 love languages has helped me understand my children. But because I'm speaking at my kids' school, I'm going to use other people's stories because I kind of want to protect their privacy. I mean, if it got back to them that I was telling stories about them and their troubled moments, I don't think that would be good for our loving relationship, and that's what we want, right? Okay. So, how many of you know what a love tank is, you think? All right, great. I love this. It's like fresh audience. I get to just tell you. Well, if you were to go to Google and type in love tank, I did it for you. This is what you would find. That's not it. That's not what we're looking for. So I scroll down, what else might a love tank be? No, that's not it either. It is not a tank top with the word love on it. Instead, the love tank is a phrase that Dr. Chapman coined, and it is the place inside you that how you measure how loved you feel. You might know that someone loves you, but if they're not speaking your love language, and we'll define that in a second, then that needle is not going to stay at full for very long. My grandfather was Swedish, and he told my grandmother, I told you I loved you when I asked you to marry me. If anything changes, I'll let you know. So he was not very concerned with making sure that his wife felt loved. But I think that in their way, they knew, because he did things for her, and that's how he communicated love. So what is a love language? It is the way that we express and receive love. And not everybody speaks the same love language. There are 5. So as you look at this list, you might identify closely with 1 or 2 words of affirmation, and we will go through all of these specifically. Quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch or meaningful touch. So this all works really well in a marriage relationship. So I'm glad that you got the book for married couples. But today we're going to talk about how we can use these to understand our children. There is, you may have seen on the first screen that we had up here, there is this book specifically on the love languages for children, and there's a book specifically for the love languages of teenagers. Does anyone have teens? I know we have some. Okay. So we're going to talk about how they work with children, but at the end of every love language, I'm also going to be talking specifically about how we can use these with teenagers, which are it's a different category. The fact that there's a whole separate book for teens can hint at that. And keep in mind, all of your children will become teenagers. So I'm scratching the surface. If you're interested in this topic, if you want to know more, I do recommend getting the books. So throughout our session today, I want you to be kind of asking yourself the question, when do you think your child feels the most loved? And conversely, when does your child feel the least loved? And do keep in mind that your child's love language may not be the same as yours. It's very common for us, like my love language is quality time. So when I want to communicate to my husband or my kids that I love them, I'll want to do something with them. But if their love language is acts of service, they don't necessarily want me to spend a lot of time or go for a walk with them, but it would really communicate love if I make their lunches instead of make them make their own. Thankfully, my son, his love language is not acts of service, so he does make his own lunches. Love that. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is physical touch. This is the easiest love language to use because there's almost always an opportunity if your kid is in your house. It's also the earliest one that children understand. Babies understand this before they know what the words I love you mean. But studies show that many parents only touch their children when it's necessary, when you're dressing them, when you're putting them in the car seat, carrying them to bed. But we can and should be more intentional than that. And it often really does take intentionality, especially if this is not your love language. When I was a mother of small children and they felt like they were on me, I felt like saying, my love language is leave me alone, give me some space. But that didn't always work. So I want to share with you a story from a parent whose experience I can relate to with my own family, and that's all I'll say personally. But another author, Ellie Kay, shares this. And I'm going to read her story so I don't mess it up. She said, Joshua was the youngest of 7 military kids, her 7 military kids. He was also the toughest as he constantly jumped off bunk beds, 5 stitches, ran into trailer hitches, 7 stitches, and even cut off the tip of his finger, 10 stitches. It was tough to keep him still. After studying the 5 Love Languages book in a chapel Bible study, we decided that his language was meaningful touch. It certainly explained why he always wanted to wrestle with his 3 older brothers, even if it meant picking a fight and getting squashed on the floor. So in order to speak his love language, his dad decided to make it a habit to snuggle him whenever possible. So when we watched a movie as a family, Joshua sat on his dad's lap and got snuggles. It broke through, and as we spoke this love language more, his desire to pick a fight with his older brothers diminished. Don't get me wrong, he still loved to wrestle them at every opportunity, but it was in a positive way. Now, even though he's outgrown snuggles now, he's been through West Point, he still wrestles his older brothers when they come home for holidays, and we hug him every chance we get. So if there's a lot of grabbing and wrestling, that might be a clue. And we will talk, after we go through all 5 love languages, we will talk about how do you know what your child or teen's love language is. So holding a small child while reading to him or her also doubles as quality time. Hugs and kisses is an easy way for young kids, although their acceptance of this dialect of the love language will change over time, and it will matter when and where this happens. All right, so the second bullet point, since we've already done the first, just be mindful of shifting dialects, which is the way we express meaningful touch. Boys enter an affection resistance stage. I think it's between 7 and 9 years old. So if their love language was physical touch, then they might, kind of shy away from hugs and kisses that that was welcome before. They may shy away from that, but it doesn't mean that they don't want other forms of physical touch. It might be wrestling, it might be arm wrestling, it might be high fives, or I don't know, what do guys do? Slap on the back. The book mentioned tripping. Is this a fun thing that males do? Do you trip each other? I don't know. So I'll let you figure out other ways. Sports or games that require physical touch might be another idea. Girls in puberty, a lot of dads tend to back off physical touch when girls are going through puberty. Don't do that, dads. They still need physical touch. Don't be shy about it. It's so important for girls to not feel like when their bodies are changing, now their dad doesn't want to touch them anymore. There are obviously appropriate ways to do that. Okay, so for teenagers, my son hugs me many times a day at home. But if we're in front of his friends, I do not approach with open arms. There have been times after like a choir performance, I will go up to say he did a good job, and if he, starts coming at me, I'll grab him. But if he's not the one to initiate, I'm not going to in front of his friends. So, all right, I think we've already covered that. Just remember that the dialects change as they get older. So we'll say one more tips for teens. Teens communicate mood by body language. I mean, everybody does, but watch their body language. Observe and learn the appropriate time for touching a teen. If they're standing especially close to you, maybe that's the time to put your hand on their shoulder or give them a hug. If their arms are folded, they probably don't want a hug. If they're in a defensive position, if they're angry, don't. It's not going to be received well. After a major accomplishment, yes. Maybe during times of failure, for lack of a better word, like if your teen is going through a breakup, sure, yes. In front of friends, no, unless they initiate it. So just try to be sensitive to the mood, which is like the mantra of parenting teenagers. Okay, words of affirmation. You were looking at a little sticky note in a lunchbox here. Have a good first week at school. We love you. For children whose primary love language is words of affirmation, nothing is more important to their sense of being loved than to hear parents and other adults verbally affirm them. But the reverse is also true. Words of condemnation will hurt them deeply. And if you are correcting, the way you correct matters to them more than if their love language is not words of affirmation. And the same is true for all of the love languages. So, for example, with physical touch, if that's your love language, if that child was to, if you're mad at your kid and so you withdraw meaningful touch from them, and maybe you don't even realize you're doing it, that will hurt them more than it would hurt someone with a different love language. So back to words of affirmation, harsh and critical words are detrimental to all children, but to those whose primary language is words of affirmation, this can be devastating. And they will play those words in their minds for a long time, like years to come possibly. The most obvious words of affirmation are I love you, but when you say I love you, let it stand alone. So I'm going to read just a little section from one of the books that I pictured. I don't remember which one. But it says, to say I love you, ... will you please do this for me, dilutes the theme of love. To say I love you, but I'll tell you right now, kind of cancels itself out. The words I love you should never be diluted with conditional statements. It's true for all children, but especially for those whose love language is words. So we can also communicate love with words of praise or encouragement. And the first note on this is to be specific. Maybe when your child is very little, it works to say, you're the best daughter ever, or you're amazing, you're a rock star, you're the best. But as they get older, we need to be more specific. So tell her what you love or admire about her. Maybe it's something you saw them doing, or a character trait that she demonstrates that you're working on in yourself. Maybe your teen might, be having some acne, but you can still praise, say you have a beautiful smile, or your eyes are so striking. Also, be genuine. Don't say great catch if it was an average catch. Children know when praise isn't justified. And frequent random praise is also risky for another reason. Sometimes they become so accustomed to it that they expect it, and then when they don't get praise for being average, they think something's wrong with them, and they get anxious. So encouraging words are most effective when they're focused on a specific effort your child has made. The goal is to catch your kid doing something good and praise him or her for it. And when you can't praise results, you can usually praise efforts, hopefully. And this is especially true for teenagers. So obviously, our kids need guidance from us, loving guidance. And that's going to include a lot of negatives. Don't drink. Don't stay out too late. Don't cheat. Don't put metal in the microwave. Don't put a wet towel on a wooden chair. Like, all of these things, we have to give this type of guidance. But we need to also include positive guidance. So one way of doing that is looking for their interests and abilities and giving positive reinforcement. Offering to, if they're interested in some kind of hobby, offering to come alongside and, get them the tools that they need to explore it or take a class for it. There's a story in the book about a dad who had his tween, I don't remember the age, mow the lawn, and heard Dr. Chapman say, don't always use negative guidance. And the dad said, but won't he always be a mediocre grass mower if I don't point out the grass he missed? And Dr. Chapman said, it's a matter of timing. After 2 hours of mowing the lawn, no one is encouraged to hear that the job was not done perfectly. To do so is almost sure to make the teenager hate mowing grass. When his efforts are rewarded with praise, he feels appreciated and motivated to mow the grass again. So it's a matter of timing. Praise the effort, and then before he mows the grass the next time, maybe point out, you see this strip over here is a little bit extra long, just make sure we overlap, just kind of positively correct. There's another story in the book where a dad asked his teenager if there was anything you could change about me and how I relate to you, what would it be? And the teenager said, I know you love me, but you're criticizing me all the time. And the dad was shocked. And he just, for days he was thinking about this, like, what? I don't feel critical of my son. I don't know where this is coming from. And then he finally realized that most of his interactions with his son was correcting or offering, constructive criticism, okay? Like telling him how to do things better. But because he didn't couch it in praise for the efforts, and he didn't have other conversations with him, all that teenager was holding on to was the critical feedback. It felt critical to the teenager. So the dad had to be intentional about how he was communicating with his son. More tips for teens. Just hang on to this. It might be hard to imagine, but rather than condemning your child's friends who are making poor choices, now, Ann's son is friend with my son, so this does not really apply, right? Your son's friend is not making poor choices that I know of. Dr. Chapman says it's far better to take a loving approach that expresses concern for them. So instead of criticizing your child's friend's choices, you might see an article, I was going to say in the newspaper, but on your phone, of an accident caused by drunk driving, and bring that up and say how concerned you are about this type of thing and how painful it is to think about the devastation in the lives of the people who were hit and the kid who was involved, and that will come across more loving. So Dr. Chapman says when your child hears loving expressions of concern for other young people, he's more likely to identify with you than when he hears you condemning. Okay, time for another story. So this is from the same mother that we heard from before about another one of her sons, Daniel. She says, Daniel, our oldest, has a love language of words of affirmation. When he was 9 years old, he had a hardcore soccer coach who yelled at the kids frequently. Coach Gibson was loud and proud, and Daniel faced this challenge. We knew that our son felt bad when he made a mistake on the field and his coach fired off corrections. So every time he had a practice or a game, we gave him a note to put inside his shoe. You can't have shorts with pockets in soccer, he says. We called it a secret treasure for him to hide away and carry with him on the field. The note would say something like, "You are a treasure to us and we love you." Or, "We believe in you and you make us proud just by trying hard." From the time he started hiding treasures in his shoes, he started feeling better about himself. By the end of the year, he felt like a full-blown soccer player, and he was proud that he finished the season. So some other ideas for words of affirmation. We already mentioned putting notes in the lunchbox with encouraging words. Mention something specific that you've observed that highlights your child's accomplishments. Text your older child, telling them how much they mean to you. Say "I love you" whenever you leave each other. Leave a post-it note on a cereal box or a mirror. Something that I read in this book for teenagers, studies show that teens who do not hear "I love you" from parents will often experience deep emotional pain in adulthood. That is scary, but the good news is it's very easy to say, hopefully, "I love you." And also, praise your child in front of others. For others to hear you praising your kid will know that you are not ashamed and that others know that you appreciate them as well. Quality time. This one's my favorite. So even if quality time is not your child's primary love language, many children crave undivided attention from parents. As we all know, this is not news. This is also the love language that requires the most sacrifice and intentionality. It takes definitely more time. But it doesn't require that you go anywhere special. I just showed a picture on the screen of a dad and a daughter fishing. That's great quality time, or it can be. But you don't have to go outside of the house. Most of the time, our focused attention with our kids happens inside our house alone. Positive eye contact is really important. Studies show that a lot of times we look at our kids when they're doing something wrong and we give them a look. And sometimes we give them loving looks when they're doing something that's really, special and pleasing. But other than that, we're so distracted by our phones and other things that we're, multitasking. We're doing something over here and we're listening, But especially if your kid's love language is quality time, make positive eye contact. Quality conversations. It's crucial to spend time in quality conversations with your child, no matter their age. If you limit your talking to your kids to just correction or instruction, like "you did this wrong," or "here's how I want you to do this," your children may never learn the value of positive, focused attention. Reading to your kids is another great way to have quality time. Okay, this is especially for teens, but I feel like this applies for lots of ages. Maintain eye contact, don't multitask, refuse to interrupt, listen for the feelings behind the words. This is kind of a big one, along with observe body language, because I feel like, I don't think this would be a surprise for my son to hear me say this, but I think he uses all of his words at school, so when he's home, he doesn't talk as much. And so in order to understand where he's coming from, I have to use not just his words, but his body language and listen for the feelings behind what he's saying. Ask reflective questions, not just yes or no. Express understanding, and now this last one is going to raise some eyebrows. Ask permission to share your perspective. This is Dr. Chapman's idea, it's not my idea. Why, you might ask? And he says, the question is not whether the parents have the right to speak to the teenager. Obviously, you have the right to speak to your teenager. The question is, do you want your teen to listen to what you are saying. Asking permission recognizes that she's an individual and she has a choice of hearing what's on your heart and mind, or not hearing it. So you're recognizing your teen as an individual, you're creating the climate for empathetic dialogue, and if they say, yes, you can share your perspective, then hopefully they will be more likely to take it to heart, rather than if you just share it without asking that first. Okay, this cartoon at the bottom, in case it's not clear on the recording, it's a little game show. I'm sorry, because I said so is not an acceptable answer. So as our kids become teens, because we do need to say because I said so every once in a while, right? I think that's valid. Replace because I said so with let me tell you why. As they get older, become more independent, they are really less likely to be satisfied with because I said so. And also, teach rather than preach. That will come across much better. And I'm going to pause here and reiterate how important it is to understand and communicate love to our kids according to their love language and not ours, and just know that it might be different. And I'm going to share with you a story from a woman named Deb. She experienced an empty love tank while her father was away during the Vietnam conflict. Her love language of quality time was unmet by her dad, because he wasn't there, and by her mom, who was there. She said, "My mother showed love by acts of service. She cooked and canned and cleaned and baked and sewed and mended and washed incessantly. We had a spotless house. I was always clean and life was sterile. I wanted my mother to sit down with me and listen to my questions, but she was too busy and didn't realize my need. I withdrew to books and schoolwork where I excelled. I began to think of myself as an imposition on others. I became independent to a fault, trying to figure out everything without asking for help. I grew fearful of rejection. Rather than opening up to others in relationship, I hid myself and only showed what I thought would be accepted. There were other factors involved in this unhealthy pattern of development, but I know the year I turned 6 was crucial, and that a lack of quality time was a fundamental part of the problem." So, kind of a cautionary tale there, and just shows how when we aren't lining up with our kids' love language, it can make a big difference for them. Some ideas for quality time would be, instead of waiting until all your chores are done before spending time with your kid, invite them or include them in your daily activities, such as laundry, grocery shopping, or yard work. That's kind of hard sometimes. You could also just play a board game first with the kid, and then do your chores. Read to your kids. Stop what you're doing to make eye contact with your child as they tell you something important. Watch your child's favorite show with them. I'm sorry if it's one that you really don't like. Find things to laugh about together. Ask specific questions about their day that don't have a yes or no answer. Schedule date time with your kid, and involve older children and teens in vacation planning, researching the internet together. Try to have family meals as much as you can. I know it's hard, especially in sports seasons. Okay, receiving gifts. This is another one that's really not my love language, which means I have to work harder at speaking it, and we all should work at speaking all of these. The goal is to be multilingual. Is anyone here not a gifts person? Yeah? Okay. Well, then you're gonna understand this next meme. When your kids say, "You never buy me anything," put a little bow on the electricity and clean water, the stove. I thought that was pretty funny. But for parents to truly speak love language of gifts, the child must feel that his parents genuinely care. So you should be speaking the other love languages along with giving the gifts. And I don't mean like in the same moment. You don't have to like be patting them on the back and giving them a gift and, mopping underneath their feet. But consistently communicate love throughout the week, because there is a temptation for really busy people to give gifts as a substitute for the other love languages. So, when a parent offers a gift if the child will clean his room, that's not a gift, it's a payment for services rendered. When a parent promises ice cream if they leave the parent alone for a certain amount of time, that's a bribe. And your kids know that. So we're not saying don't do those things, but that doesn't count as a gift. And if you have a child whose love language is receiving gifts, just know that doesn't count. So when giving gifts, consider your child or teen's welfare above all. If your kid is asking for their own phone and they're too young, don't give it to them. Just don't do it. It's okay. You can be countercultural. If your teenager is asking for a car and you have the money for a car, maybe the grandparent is like, I would like to buy them a car for their 16th birthday, and you know that your teen is not ready for that level of freedom, say no. You are still the parent. Say, consider their welfare above all. Also, consider their interests above your own. This is something that I really need to work on myself. For example, I know my daughter does not care about clothes at all, and this is an established fact. Everybody knows this. So I thought, well, I'll get her some clothes for Christmas. Well, I just about ruined Christmas for her because she saw her brother getting new speakers for his computer and something else that he really wanted, and she got excited when it was her turn, and she opened a flannel shirt and a fleece zippy, which I thought was great, and she was not excited at all. She wanted something fun. So I kept the clothes for myself. It's my favorite. And I took her out and she picked something out. But yes, I need to get my kids things that they like, not things that I like. Also, this one is really hard for me too. Don't forget the ceremony that there could be. For kids whose love language is receiving gifts, it matters if you wrap it beautifully and if you give it in a thoughtful way. Like, it's not enough to just come home with it in a plastic bag and here, I got you this. I'm gonna move on in the interest of time. Okay, so if your kids have this love language, you might keep a small collection of inexpensive gifts tucked away for your child. If one of you parents is gonna be gone for a trip, you might have the other parent give the child a gift from the one who's gone, or just at a time when you sense there is a need. And keep unique gift boxes and nice wrapping paper that can be used to package even the simplest presents. You could give personally made coupons for the child for you get to pick the next movie at the next movie night, or you get to pick the next restaurant we go to, or an extra half an hour before bedtime with the parent. So those are just some ideas. Acts of service. Now this is an interesting one because we serve our children all the time, right? It's kind of built into parenting. Acts of service that are genuine expressions of love will communicate on an emotional level to most kids. However, if service is your child's primary love language, your acts of service will communicate most deeply that you love them. And I'm talking about things that are kind of above and beyond the normal everyday things, like fixing a bicycle, the chain fell off and they don't know how to put it back on, or the flat tire. Or mending, do we mend anymore? Mending a doll's dress? I don't know if we do that. Whatever you can do. All right, story time. This is Rebecca's story. It's a story about a dad whose love language was acts of service, who assumed that his daughter's love language was also acts of service. Rebecca said, for most of my teen years and young adulthood, I didn't understand how my dad communicated love to me. I, with words of affirmation and quality time as my two primary love languages, did not perceive his acts of service as displays of love. Learning about the 5 love languages helped me to stop disqualifying acts of service as valid fuel for my love tank. I remember one of the first times that shifted for me. It was during or after college, and I was preparing to travel by train. My dad drove me to the station, walked with me to the proper platform. We recapped pickup plans, hugged, and I found a seat on board. Moments later, there was a muffled knock on the thick glass window. I looked over to see my dad with hands cupped around his eyes, trying to peer into the train so he could find me. We smiled and waved at each other, and then he dutifully stood back and waited. Once the train started moving, he walked and waved alongside the section where he knew I was sitting. He waved from the end of the platform, and he kept waving even after he could be certain that I could still see him, which I could. That day, with heart and tear-filled eyes full, I realized I could interpret and receive acts of service as I love you. But, and when we're raising kids, acts of service do have an intermediate step. We serve our kids, but as they are ready, we teach them how to serve themselves and each other. It's not always a convenient or quick process. It might be quicker for you to just do the laundry yourself than teach them how to do it right. It might be quicker to make the meal yourself than to teach them how to cook or put food on the table. But you want to do this for them, to help them in their development and get them ready to launch and be independent people. We also want to teach them how to serve others. This is a photo of some kids who are helping at a food bank. Doing service in your community together is a great way to instill the importance and the joy of serving, but it doesn't even have to be this organized. They could watch you holding doors open for other people or giving up your seat for someone who's older than you. You could serve in church, or you could just invite people into your home and share a meal with them. All of these are ways that you are serving that your kids are watching. Now, if your child's primary love language is service, that doesn't mean you must jump at every request. But you should be sensitive to those requests and recognize that your response will matter more to them. Ideas for service would be help your kid practice for their sports team, help them with computer problems, help with homework, make a special breakfast for them, help them fix a favorite toy. Okay, so this is in the book. Parents are practicing manipulation if acts of service are always tied to your teens doing something you desire. For example, I will cook this meal for you after you clean your room. I'll take you for driving practice if you, and manipulation is never an expression of love. On the other hand, some teenagers are masters at manipulation as well. If you love me, you'll do this for me. So in one of these books, the authors suggest don't tell your kids about the 5 love languages because they'll be able to use it against you. If you love me, you'll buy this for me. If you love me, you'll do this for me. So the rule of thumb with acts of service is that you do acts of service for your teens that they cannot do for themselves. When they're young, you wash the clothes for them. When they're teenagers, you teach them how to wash the clothes. That doesn't mean that you'll never do laundry for them, but it means that you don't always do it for them. You might even make a list of things that you want to teach your teen before they leave the house, and you let them pick the order so they feel like some ownership of it. Okay, now, how to learn your child's love language. The first thing would be to observe how your child expresses love to you. This is really effective with a younger child, not so much with a 15-year-old, but this is best for ages 5 to 10. If they're always giving you something, or if they're praising you, oh, you look so pretty, mommy, or something like that, or if they want to spend time with you, those are all clues. Also, observe how your child expresses love to others. Listen to what your child requests most often. If they say, look what I'm doing, that might be they want you to give them words of affirmation. Yes, that was amazing. That cartwheel that was more like a little hop, that was great. If they're asking to sit and read together, that's quality time. Notice also what your child most frequently complains about. That might be a clue too. You never spend time with me. You never do this. That's another clue. Offer choices if you're still not sure. Give your child a choice between two options. For example, a father might say to a 10-year-old, I'm gonna get off early from work this afternoon. Would you rather go to the gym together, or I could help you pick out some new basketball shoes? Which one do you prefer? And so now that is a choice between quality time or receiving gifts. The book has different suggestions for choices for ages 10, 6, and 15. If none of that helps you, you could try a very long 15-week experiment. And that would be choose one of the 5 love languages to focus on for 2 weeks. See what happens, see if your child responds positively to that, and then back off for a week. That doesn't mean don't do that love language, just dial it down to maybe a third of what you did before and see what happens. And then pick another one. But if none of that works, somewhere along the way, they must have decided that it's okay for teens to know about love languages, because there is now on the website, if you go to 5lovelanguages.com, I've highlighted the quizzes tab. You can take one for yourself, and this would help you with your marriage. You can take one as your child, if you know them well enough, probably do. And there's one that teenagers can take. So at that point, they're gonna know. The secret is out. Also, with your teenagers or older children, you could gain a lot of insight by being willing to ask questions like, from your perspective, what would make our relationship better? Or if you could change one thing about me, what would you change? Or if that's a little too scary, that sounds a little scary. I don't know if I want to open that box, but it would be illuminating. You could say, who would you say is your best friend? What does he or she do that makes you feel like he's your best friend? And if he says, well, he's always encouraging me, or he likes to spend time with me, or we wrestle around together, these are all clues. So, oh man, we're out of time, but I'm gonna be here for a few minutes if anybody has questions. But these are the real resources, and I've covered the basics, but they have more stories in them, and they talk about like love languages and discipline, and love languages and your marriage, and they just kind of get into the nitty gritty. So, what do you know what time we're supposed to be back in there? Is there a break, or are we like supposed to head right now?
I think there's a little break.
Okay. So, should we maybe, do you want to stop the recording, Mr. Dubke? And then if you have questions, you can feel